Hi, good evening, and thanks for coming, and thanks for being here. I am Chelsea Saldana, one of the school counselors here at Sun Prairie West. This is our fourth year doing the post-secondary planning presentation for high school athletes. Personally, I have a passion for sports and then college sports. I played in college as well, just Division III, but had a great time playing softball at Stevens Point. And then I met Tyler through just kind of interest in sports. And he is currently a counselor and athletics advisor at Madison. Also has a great background in some recruiting and coaching and all the above in sports. So I'll let him introduce himself a little bit more.
Okay. All right, this is a very nice theater. I work at Madison East High School, so it's not as nice as this, so we're going to work on this. All right. So thank you all for coming. We're going to be talking about collegiate athletics, and as a counselor, I like having participation, but if you're not feeling it, that's okay too. I get it 7 o'clock. So just to introduce myself a little bit, again, my name is Tyler Kastner. I work at Madison East High School as a school counselor. My background in athletics was in high school. I was a baseball, basketball, and golf player, and went on to play Division II basketball for Southern Illinois University of Edwardsville, down by St. Louis. And then from there, ended up transferring to University of Illinois, where I was a student manager for the basketball team through the 04 and 06 seasons, and worked under Coach Weber, Bruce Weber, like just doing a lot of college basketball stuff there. And so from there, in grad school, I was a coach at UW-Platteville, Division III, so I kind of hit all levels, and then moved to Chicago and worked as a collegiate athletic counselor in Chicago on the south side for a really productive high school that produced a lot of D1 athletes. So I kind of learned the process through that, but like Chelsea, I have a passion for this, and this is something that I feel like all student athletes can participate in. It takes some effort and work, but if you're willing to do that, I think you can have a great experience in college and just enjoy kind of what that experience looks like for 4 years. So that's my background. I now work at Madison East as a school counselor for college and career, and then do the athletic counseling for the Madison Metropolitan School District 1 day a week at all 4 comprehensive high schools. So that's my role as of right now. I will say also, I do have 4 children, so forgive me. I am a little tired as well. They are all under 10 years of age, so my wife and I are very busy. So, all right, the objectives for today, little teaching hat thing. We are going to be looking at, for student athletes that are in this room, self-reflecting on whether college athletics is for you. That's the first step you need to get kind of introduced to, right? Like, is this something that I want to do? It is time consuming, but it is also rewarding at the same time. So you're going to self-reflect as we go through this, all right? We're going to understand the basic requirements mainly for academics, okay? As far as academics are concerned, we'll go through kind of the different levels and what they mean, and then essentially what are those requirements academically, because you could be getting recruited, but at the same time, you could miss out due to some academic eligibility issues that you have. All right, and the last thing, we're going to identify ways to start the recruiting process, okay? If you haven't started already, that's okay. Usually we typically say, freshman year is the best, but sophomore, junior years are also good too, and we're at the beginning of the year, so this is now the time to start doing that, okay? All right, so for those student athletes in the room and parents who are going to go home and probably talk to their student athletes about this, the big thing is you're going to decide if this experience is right for you. All right, so when you're playing collegiate athletics, we're going to talk about kind of a typical day that you're going to experience on college. So if everybody has that worksheet that we kind of went through, you should have this, all right? I'll have you don't have to write every sentence. You can just write the words that are underlined, okay? You can go back to the other one. All right, so starting at 7:30 a.m., which for some of you might actually be earlier depending upon your sport. This is very sport dependent. All right, it's a wake up, all right? You're gonna go through your morning routine, kind of pack your bag, get your things ready, kind of figure out what you're gonna need for the day, right? You're getting your class schedule situated, all that kind of stuff. That's 7:30 in the morning. Some of you may have 2-a-days, right? If you're in sports that might have conditioning in the morning, that's a 6 a.m. wake up. You're gonna be doing conditioning, weight training, training table, meaning you're getting stretched out for the day, all that kind of stuff. But 7:30, we'll say typically will be the start of your day. All right, 8:30, we're gonna go breakfast. It takes you a good hour to get ready for school. You're looking good, right? Get out to the dining hall. You're gonna have some breakfast with your teammates or friends on campus. And then 9 a.m. is your first class. All right, as a student athlete, you get the choice of what your schedule looks like a lot of times before the rest of the student population because you have practices and mandated required training sessions, things like that. So you will most likely, even in D3, you might have an academic advisor for your sport. All right, meaning you're gonna get first choice of that biology class in the morning, afternoon, whatever that may look like, all right? First class is at 9 a.m. Typically, we're talking about 45 minutes to an hour and a half is gonna be your schedule there. All right, your second class of the day, probably right after that. You wanna load those classes up in the morning because you're gonna have a lot of practice and things in the afternoon. All right, 11:30, video coordinating. All right, so I don't know if many of you go through video coordinating, but in college it's a huge thing where they basically break down film of your performance and they walk you through individually or as a team what kind of scouting looks like for the opponent upcoming, or if you're in an individual sport, you know, things you can work on for the week. What does your practice look like? How are we gonna get your skill set up and running? All that kind of stuff, all right? So that's 11:30. All right, lunch at 12:30 with your teammates again. Okay. All right, 1:30, we're halfway through your first day, all right? Third and final class. Most likely in college, you're gonna have a third class, maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, you get those two classes for an hour and a half. All right, third and final class of the day will be 1:30 to 3, and then you're gonna arrive at the training room. Most of you will have some sort of like special room where they do like heat pads, they'll stretch you out, get you taped, ankles taped, all that kind of stuff. You're gonna arrive there at 3 o'clock, and then at 4 o'clock, you're gonna have your practice, right? So essentially what you're doing is working on anything for about 2 hours to 3 hours, again, depending upon the sport, if you're in season, if you're out of season, all that kind of stuff. All right, and practices are typically, we would say about 2 hours in length, if not 2.5. It depends on the level that you're in as well, right? So if you're in D1, some of the practices that I've seen have run about 3.5 hours, depending. You know, D3, we were looking probably around, what do you think, 2 to 3? Yeah, two-ish. Okay, so after practice, you gotta get like cooled down, right? So you're gonna go to the training room and you're gonna make sure that you're cooling down properly and taking care of your body, all right? So everything within sports, you're gonna have some requirement to make sure that your body is at peak physical condition, especially in college. It's gonna change from high school level, right? So this is part of like the job focus of college athletics. All right, 7 p.m., you're eating dinner. Some programs you actually eat with your teammates at what they call a dining hall or training table, and essentially that's where the whole team eats together and you get free meals, which is kind of cool. Otherwise, you're just gonna go to one of the local places on campus and, you know, eat what they have there and available for you. All right, and then most likely in between 7 and 9, you're gonna be studying or getting your own time, and you have made it through your first day. All right, so 9 p.m., that is your evening. It is yours. Enjoy having 2 hours of time to yourself. So it is going to differ depending upon the college program you are at, all right? And this is where recruiting will come into play, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. But essentially, different programs have different requirements for athletes. So you need to make sure when you're talking to colleges and when your student athlete is talking to colleges, please make sure you ask what their schedule looks like. Because if you notice this, there's not a lot of time for studying, right? There's not a lot of time to take exams, all that kind of stuff. So you want to make sure that you're getting the time you need for yourself as well to take care of what you need to do. All right, so this is just kind of an example schedule of what you're looking at, and you're going to decide based on this, right, in high school. Is this something that I want to do? Is this too much time that I'm going to be spending on the field and in the classroom, and I don't get extra time to hang out with friends, sleep, do all this other stuff? Or is this something that looks pretty appealing where my time is kind of allotted and I get to do it? So these are kind of the fun things that you get to decide right now. Other things that you're going to consider is you're going to be on the road, right? So a lot of schools will travel in 3 different modes of transportation. Some schools fly charter, depending upon the program, right? Some schools will be on a charter bus where you're going to be studying, doing things like that. And then other schools are taking like minivan type things, traveling around, doing different things like that. You know, what is appealing to you? This is where you have to look at the college fit and figure out what the facilities look like, what are the transportation modes of transportation, how far are we traveling? Like if you're on a minibus for 6 hours, that's a lot, right, to handle. And so there are trips that with Platteville, we had to go from Platteville all the way up to Superior. That's a long road trip on a coach bus, right? So you have to decide, like, what are my priorities? How do I want to travel? How do I want to experience that? As you're looking at college athletics, like, what does that program or facility have that is going to allow me to do my job as a student athlete, but also as an academic student? All right. How many are familiar with the food that you get as a student athlete? Anybody here have that? No? Okay. Again, it's going to vary by program. When I was at D2 playing college basketball, we got literally $5 for lunch. So we were at Wendy's constantly with the dollar menu, if you remember that back in the day. All right. Some teams, like I said, will have a team table where you get free meals at the dining hall. It's kind of the best of both worlds. You get to eat on campus. You're together. You're doing that. You're going to get per diem money if your sport is in the winter or spring break or fall break. You get money to go eat outside. I have no idea nowadays what that is. I don't know how much you get for per diem. You will be eating a lot of fast food, I will say that. And then away game meals, you'll most likely be together as you're traveling on the road. So like if you were to travel to Stevens Point and go play, you're going to be able to eat at a restaurant. They're going to pay for it. They're going to do all that stuff. You do get free meals as college athletes, which is amazing and awesome. However, some of them are good, some are bad. It depends on what you're looking at. And then you have hotel meals. So if you're in the realm of where you're like, I know D1 and D2 do this a lot, where they stay in a hotel overnight, and then you essentially get a hotel meal, so you're eating at the hotel. You're not traveling out to a restaurant and doing stuff like that. You're eating actually within the hotel, and then you'll travel that way. It will differ on what you're getting. Again, this is a question to ask college coaches, all right? Okay, the gear. So this is also a very cool part of college athletics and something to consider. What kind of gear, what kind of sponsorship do they have? All right, are they a Nike, Adidas, Under Armour program, all that kind of stuff, all right? I'm gonna show you only the best gear in the NCAA. So if you're very aware of Illinois, that's where I graduated from, probably the best school, right, in the Big Ten. All right, so Illinois is a Nike campus. You will gather free gear. It doesn't matter what program you're in. I know Chelsea, being with Stevens Point, got free gear. Oh, they didn't give you free gear? Oh, you had to pay for it. Oh, okay. All right. Platteville, you didn't have to. Okay. So it depends on the program, I guess. All right. But anyway, we had camp gear, so we had T-shirts, shorts, all that kind of stuff, shoes that were available to us if we needed to buy them. They were at discounted rates, things like that. If you're in your specific sport, you'll notice like you're gonna get a ton of like campus gear that is yours to keep, and you get to walk around with it. Everybody will know who you are, right, as a student athlete, because that's yours and yours to keep. So once again, when you're at the recruiting process, this is something to think about, like, or is this something that I want to have? Like, what kind of gear do they have for me? What kind of things are available to me? And then it's kind of a fun little perk that you have as being a student athlete. All right, so if you've decided to play, we're looking at the different options, okay? And we're gonna talk about all the options, not just D1 and D2. Everybody focuses on D1 and D2. The biggest thing I can tell you is please be realistic about what you are looking at for your sport, okay? There is no shame in D3, JUCO, anything like that. They all there's one path that everybody thinks they need to go to, but there are multiple paths to get to where you want to go. All right, it is your experience and what you feel is best for you as a student athlete, but also as a parent or guardian, right? And so there are multiple options that are available to you. All right, when we look at NCAA D1, those are typically your biggest schools, the schools that have the most athletic scholarships. They also are your bigger public institutions for the most part. Some are private, but these are the ones in the state of Wisconsin that are D1. All right, with the exception of Illinois, obviously. So, we notice a theme. All right, D2. All right, the only D2 in the state of Wisconsin is UW Parkside. All right, they can give an athletic scholarship. All right, they are an institution that usually gives either partial scholarships or half scholarships, but there are some sports they will give a whole scholarship to. Partial and half only mean that what they would do is they would pay for books, maybe tuition, but not room and board. They would kind of divvy up the finances depending upon what your FAFSA looks like, and also your academic merit-based scholarships. And then a couple other ones. St. Cloud State is in Minnesota. and Lewis University is in the suburbs of Chicago. So these are some D2 options that you have. All right, D3, there's a ton in the state of Wisconsin. I only listed a couple here, but the whole WEAC conference, which is your UW-Whitewater, UW-Platteville, Superior, all those types of schools, Edgewood College, Carroll University, this is kind of a mix of public versus private, right? They are not allowed to give an athletic scholarship per se. Inside, what I can tell you is if academically you are gaining admission to the school, they are not allowed to, quote unquote, give you an athletic scholarship. They will find you money to come play. They are private. So they have a little more, like, they have some different ways of giving you money to counteract the fact they can't give you an athletic scholarship like D1 or D2. So if your academics are good enough, and they will find you some sort of grant or award that will help you supplement some of the money that these schools cost, because they do cost a little more too on the other end. All right, that's D3. And then NAIA is one that not a lot of people talk about, but they also have phenomenal options. NAIA can give an athletic scholarship. We'll talk about their academic requirements here in a minute, but NAIA schools are athletic scholarship eligible. Viterbo is one of the few in Wisconsin. It's by La Crosse. And so the other ones we have is St. Xavier and St. Ambrose. They're mostly your parochial schools, but they are allowed to give athletic scholarships, which is great. All right, and then your two-year colleges, all right? Most of these for the NJCAA, or JUCO as most people call them, all right? Madison Area Technical College, you are allowed, new rules with NCAA, which I didn't put on the slide at the end and I'll try to add it later, is essentially if you are eligible for D1 or D2 and you want to go JUCO, you only have to go for a year now. It used to be where you had to go for 2 years and then you transferred out. You only have to go for a year if you are academically eligible for D1 or D2, okay? Which is a really cool option because you don't exhaust like 2 years of eligibility playing at a junior college. So now you can go for a year, become eligible in the D1 realm, and then transfer out to that school that you were hoping for, or D1 or D2, and do that. All right. These are a couple that we have. We have a ton in the state of Wisconsin that offer these. Junior college can also offer an athletic scholarship, depending upon the level. It is a really in-depth process, so I'm not going to get into that, but usually like your higher level JUCO colleges can offer scholarships for you. So if you're looking at that option to be financially, better off when you leave college, talk to the coaches and see if they can give you a scholarship to go play, because it's an option there at the JUCO level. All right? All right, academic requirements for students. All right, Division III. Actually, we'll start with JUCO. Does anybody know what the JUCO requirement is? This is where I'm going to leave it open for audience participation. Anybody? Graduation. That's it. Graduation, GED, any sort of high school diploma program, you are welcome to play junior college athletics. All right, that's the only requirement. NAIA, the requirement is you have to meet 2 out of the 3 following criteria, and it is a 2.0 GPA, weighted is fine, top half of your class, or 18 on the ACT, okay? If you meet 2 out of those 3, you are eligible for an athletic scholarship at the NAIA level. Obviously, the caveat is you have to get into the school as well, so please pay attention to that piece, all right? Division III, the only requirement is you get into the school for admission, and then you are allowed to play, all right? So for Platteville, Stevens Point, you just gained admission, you're able to go play as an option, okay? Any sort of D3. Oh, D1 and D2, here we go. All right. All right, NCAA has a really difficult process with NCAA D1 and D2. First and foremost, you have to graduate within 4 years or 8 semesters. All right, secondly, you have to register for NCAA D1 or D2 to be eligible to play when you are a freshman in college. If you do not register, you will not be eligible, okay? I have resources at the end of this slide deck that you'll get to see, and you can kind of have, I think, Chelsea, you'll send this out, right? Perfect. D2, the GPA requirement is a 2.2. It is also essentially you have to take 16 core courses, and all the core courses, English, math, science, history, world language. Just remember those 5. Mostly your graduation requirements count for these. So if you are an 8th grader becoming a freshman, or freshman, sophomore, junior, you will probably take about 12 to 15 of these right off the bat your first 3 years, all right? 2.2 is the minimum requirement to receive an athletic scholarship, all right? ACT is no longer required. It only may be required for admission to the college, okay? It is not required for D2 at this point, all right? D1 is 16 core courses, same thing, English, math, science, history, world language, right? However, D1 says after your junior year, you must have 7 core courses in English, math, and science, and those are locked in. You cannot change those. So if you start off bad in high school, you might have to count some grades that you don't want to. And then 3 of those credits can be in any other subject as long as they're on the core course list for NCAA, okay? It's a whole thing. If you have questions, Chelsea's here. She will help guide you in the counseling realm of D1 and D2. All right? Tracking your coursework. If you ever have any questions, we've included Sun Prairie East and West, their core course codes, the approved courses that they have. So each counselor at each school has to fill this out each year with the courses that actually count for D1 and D2 eligibility. So if you have any questions, your counselor will know that. All right? You would essentially click on that link, which will be sent out to you guys. Go ahead. Perfect. It'll take you to this page. This is where you type in the Sun Prairie code, west or east, depending upon your school, and it's gonna pull up a list of like 1,000 courses that count for NCAA D1 and D2. What I will say is please double check this, usually at the beginning of the year, like in August when you get your schedules, if it's like late August or mid-August. Check it then, talk to your counselor immediately, get your classes ready to go and scheduled, because there are certain classes you would think count for NCAA, but they do not, all right? We had a couple kids in Chicago that took like an AP computer science class. That does not count. All right, it is an AP course. It should count for college athletics, but NCAA deemed it as not one of the core courses, and so they did not get credit for that class, so we had to make sure shift and transition kids into classes that actually counted. All right, so you wanna make sure each year that you're doing this at the beginning of the year, just typing in the code, double checking your schedule, and making sure that you're good to go. You should have about 4 per year, if not 5 if you're taking the world language piece, okay? You can go back to the other one, perfect. All right, so with that, all good? Cool, all right. Recruiting, we're gonna get to recruiting because this is the most fun part, right? Okay, how many of you have started recruiting? Good. You can raise your hand high, it's okay. Don't be shy. It's all right, you're all good, perfect. Okay, there are multiple ways to get recruited, and this is one thing I'm gonna say. I've done this for, man, probably 20 years now, and if anybody knows that they figured out recruiting, can you talk to me afterwards? Because we can make a lot of money on this, I'm telling you, like for real. It is a mess sometimes, and that's okay, all right? Please embrace the awkward when it comes to recruiting, all right? It is not easy, and it is something that you'll probably get frustrated with, and that's bound to happen, but that's okay, all right? Keep with the process, keep working on it, and I guarantee you eventually it will come forward and you'll find a school that you want to play at, okay? All right, the biggest thing I can tell student athletes is be realistic, right? You have to be realistic, because if you're not, you're gonna eliminate a whole subset of colleges, and they're not gonna give you a look because you already said, I don't wanna go there, they're not in my level, I'm above that level, all that kind of stuff. You wanna be realistic in your approach, right? The goal is to figure out, my goal in high school was, yeah, obviously to play D1. I'm also 5'10". That's not gonna happen, all right? So the idea would be, where can I fit in? And I ended up getting lucky enough to play for a D2 school that needed a point guard at that point, and that just kind of happenstance fell in my lap. But D3 was probably where I should have been, right? Like that's where it came down to. But D2 ended up being my option. I loved it. I went down there, played for a few years, and then, moved on to U of I. So you have to be realistic in that approach. When I got to the D2 level, it was competitive. It was super competitive. I was going against guys that were 6'10", 7'1", right? Like it's just a different world. D3 was a lot shorter, okay? It would have been my game. So I had to be realistic about that approach. When D2 came, it was exciting. I got excited by it, and that was kind of a cool thing to have. All right, exposure. I can't stress this enough that if you've started the recruiting process, a great job. If you haven't started it, it's okay. The biggest thing to think about is, how do coaches know you exist, right? So how do they know your student athlete exists where they are right now, right? If their goal is to play for UW-Madison, how is Madison recognizing that your student athlete's here at Sun Prairie West? How do they do that? Is that through Twitter? Is that through social media? All right, the questionnaire I have, that little sheet, if you flip it over, there's a whole sheet of walking you through what you feel comfortable with when you're looking at recruiting. So I want the student athletes, and if you're a parent and you don't have your student athlete here, that's okay, fill it out for them. The top part is what we recommend is when we email coaches, we want you to have some athletic recommendations. So who is that? It doesn't mean it's just your high school coach, right? We all have club sports now, and we do all sorts of training and all that type of stuff. Can they speak to your athletic talent? So who are, I gave you a list, I think, of 3 people on there. You can put 1 or 2 on there, but start working on who your athletic recommendations will be. It's just like college, right? You want a letter of recommendation from somebody that can speak to your talent, your demeanor, are you a leader, that kind of stuff, right? Think about those, write those in, name, sport that you play, or what kind of club team or high school team you have. And then email coaches. You want to individualize that email too. So if you are emailing a coach, please do not make it cookie cutter. All right, you want to talk about their program. Most coaches I know, I would get in trouble. Most coaches I know have an ego, and so they like to have you talk about their program, right? It's the biggest way to catch them and get them interested in you. So what I usually recommend for students is first paragraph, or like 3 sentences, 2 sentences, whatever it is, talk about their program, talk about how great they are. Like, this is cool, like, I think I could help your program out. I see that you need, my position, all that kind of stuff. Talk about their program first, and then get into your details, all right? In the signature line of an email, you want to put your contact info. If you don't give them your contact info, they're not going to contact you, right? They have your email because the email came in, but you want to put maybe your cell phone, maybe your Twitter account, maybe your Instagram account, different things like that, okay? Social media accounts, as far as what we're looking at, is my recommendation for our students in Madison is to create a sport-specific one. Coaches have people on staff that will look at your social media personally, to find out what kind of student you are beyond the sports world, okay? This is not uncommon among college athletics. They will look at your individual personal account. However, I would recommend creating a sport-specific one where you can post highlights, pictures of yourself, give coaches information on how to get a hold of you, different things where you can follow that specific sport. Coaches are notorious for using Twitter the most. Instagram is second. They use that before phone call, text, all that stuff. They'll only usually text you when they have a personal relationship with you. But the way you build that and get that initial conversation started is through Twitter, Instagram, potentially an email depending upon like what the coach prefers, but Twitter and Instagram are your best options, to be honest. Okay, if you have a personal account and you just want to use that as your sports one, that's fine. Make sure, big thing here, please put your number, the number you are position-wise, or how to identify who you are. If you play a team sport, many students do not circle themselves, and then the coach has no idea who they're looking at. Okay, please put your name, grad year, number, position, right? If you're in an individual sport, that's fine. Make sure you're posting highlights of yourself. And then we usually recommend some sort of contact, like if you have another account like Instagram, you can post that in your Twitter profile, and then an email where they can reach out to you. If it gets personal and you're having a conversation back and forth, then you can provide the coach with your phone number. I don't recommend putting your phone number on Twitter and that kind of stuff. I've seen athletes do it, but I feel like it just opens you up for a bunch of other things, which you probably don't need at this point. All right, you're allowed to follow coaches from colleges. That's not an NCAA rule. You can do it. All right, once you follow them, my student athletes in the room, when you follow someone on Twitter and they post immediately, what happens on your social media feed? Nobody's on Twitter, Instagram, anything like that? TikTok? Anybody? If you're following someone, usually what happens when they post? You get a notification, right? Same thing with college coaches. When you post about your event or like practice or how you played that game, that's the first thing they see. That's how you're in their mind now, because now they're seeing you post and now your name's in their head a lot. So that's how we want you to follow coaches from the different programs that are there. Most coaches have some sort of social media at some point. They're even now, I know Whitewater on their website has the actual Twitter handle of the coaches that they have. All right, and the biggest thing for social media, keep it clean. Like I said, there are teams of people at certain levels that actually look at this stuff and will comb through to see what kind of student athlete you are. Okay, so it's not just you, it's also who you associate with. And that kind of happens sometimes is like maybe a friend posts something on your like feed, and now that's out there, coaches will look at that stuff. So you need to be careful of what's being posted, or talk to your friends about, hey, don't post that on this, you know, just come talk to me or do whatever. All right, collegiate athletic questionnaires is the other way. This is probably the first line you can do. Each website has one. So like UW-Whitewater has a thing, if you go to their athletic page, it just says recruits, click on that, find your sport, click there, and fill it out. What happens in recruiting is, as a student athlete fills out this form, you get a huge database on an Excel sheet, right? And it lists all of the student athletes that they have. Grad year, position, other qualities, attributes, GPA, all that stuff. They can filter it by, you know, what year we're looking at, and then they potentially highlight it for how many times you've contacted or they want to contact you, and then you move up the list depending upon, you know, what interaction you have with these coaches. That's usually the first way you get your name on the list. It's not usually the way you get recruited. It's just kind of a way that they recognize who you are. The thing I would recommend is maybe filling out the athletic questionnaire so you're on the list, and then they can put notes in that you follow them on social media, you've emailed them, you've talked to them on the phone, all that kind of stuff, okay? So those are different ways that you can gain exposure. Like I said earlier, athletic recommendations, and then off-season camps and invites. If you, in the summer or in your off-season, go to invite camps, I know they're expensive and it's not always the best. But if you can get to those invites, what's really cool about it is multiple college coaches are at one event as opposed to like a high school game or meet or something like that, where only one coach can maybe make it out because their schedule doesn't fit. But if you can get to an invite over the summer, it's the time that all coaches are off, right? They're not in season. They're not doing their thing. So I would recommend, if you can, get to some of these off-season camps. Even if you go to like UW-Whitewater and go to one of their camps, they're gonna have coaches from other schools, right? Coaches talk. That's the big thing too. Whitewater may not have a position for you, but they talk to Eau Claire, they talk to Carroll University, or they talk to Edgewood and say, hey, we really like this kid, but we've got 4 different positions already set up. You might want this kid, he's pretty good. He or she is really good, okay? So they do talk amongst each other, and that's always a good way. Plus, they're getting to see your skills in person, which is huge. There's no substitute for like seeing video or in-person skill sets, okay? All right, maintain positive attitude. This is when a coach comes and sees you play or practice. Some of them come see you practice, all right? They look at not just your athletic talent, but they will look at your attitude and behavior and all that kind of stuff too. Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, you really have to spend a lot of time, focused on the student athlete that you're recruiting. In the warm-ups, after a loss, at halftime when the team's down, on a day where it's very hot and humid or it's pouring down rain. You have to spend time looking at body language and looking at the verbal and the nonverbal cues that you get from the student athlete. And again, we try to do our homework and try to get that information on days that we're not there. So we talk to their coaches, we talk to people that we have in their area to let us know, in the dog days of summer when we're not around and there's no game for several weeks, does that student come ready to work? And or when the team has lost several games and it's December and it's snowing outside, and but yet they got to get up and go to practice, and so we're trying to look for all of these things in verbal and nonverbal and evaluations from people who would know the students well, as to determine whether or not we would like to have them on our team, and are they going to bring a positive influence.
So that's just one coach, but that's kind of like the sentiment, right? Like coaches are looking at your behavior regardless of, they'll ask around too. And I know they'll come to Chelsea and they'll ask counselors, like, how is your student athlete in the classroom, right? We had that a lot. Like, so how are they outside of athletics? Like, is this someone I got to worry about, or is this someone that's like, we can just let them have the freedom in college and do their thing? So coaches are looking at that. I forgot to mention with that worksheet also, you'll notice the middle section. When you're going through this, there are recommendations on there. You don't have to check every box, but check the ones that you feel comfortable with doing. I don't recommend that you do like email, social media, phone call, text, all that stuff. If you want to, great. It does take time. So understand that it is probably not the most efficient manner to do all of them, but figure out which one for you is most comfortable, and then those are the ones you should check and then kind of work on those little skill sets. The other thing on the bottom is anytime you're looking over the summer, usually I would say end of fall, early winter, late winter, you're looking at summer camps, invites, all that kind of stuff. Find some invites maybe around here if you're not comfortable with traveling to different states and doing that kind of stuff. Find some invites or club teams that you can get on and write those down. And then when you get those schedules, that's what you email to the coach. You got to make sure that the coaches know that you have a schedule and they can come see you play during these events, okay? All right. Oh. Ooh. All right. When you get recruited, because all of you in this room will get recruited, right? Yes? At some point. Okay, cool. Yes. All right, good. All right, be willing to ask coaches questions. This is a business first and foremost, all right? This is a person that coaches college athletics for a university that makes billions of dollars, or at the D3 level may not billions of dollars, but they make a lot of money. And so the idea is that they are trying to get to win in the program, and their goal is to win as many games as possible. When they are recruiting you, they are showing an interest in you, but also you need to be interested in them and be willing to ask those tough questions to a coach, okay? So academics, do I get to pursue the major I want, all right, is a big one. A lot of college athletics, some of them, well, no, I'm not gonna say all, some of them will steer certain student athletes into majors that are not the ones they are preferred, okay? They may go into certain majors that the coach feels will be a little easier on them so they can do the practice, they can do the other things, all right? Please make sure that when you are asking around at colleges that you're gonna be able to do the major that you wanna do, because when you find something you wanna do, that's when you stay, right? You're not in the transfer portal, you're not doing all that other fun stuff and switching colleges like I did, right? And so it's a lot of work. All right, is there an athletic academic support on campus? A lot of schools now have an athletic like building, and you get to go there and do study halls. They have tutors for you. You could get on the road, you get computers, like laptops, all that kind of stuff. Does the team have academic advisors, like someone where you get to choose your classes first? Because as an athlete, you have practice in the morning, practice in the afternoon, so you need to have a specific schedule to make sure you do that. All right, what is the balance of athletics and academics? Usually D3 is more academic athletic balance, right? Less athletics, and they understand that you're there for the academics. Once you get higher in D2 and D1, you're starting to do more practices, more things like that, and your time is consumed by the athletic world, right? So ask those tough questions in there. All right, the team, what does the current roster look like, and are they recruiting transfers, right? Transfer portal is huge. How many transfers are they recruiting, or are they recruiting transfers, or are they just recruiting high school students, right? If they're recruiting high school students, great. That's a program that you could probably walk in and they'll look at you for an athletic scholarship, but if they're recruiting a ton of transfers, right, maybe they're gonna try to wait for that one transfer that leaves the school and comes to them. So that's something you need to look at. Look at team roster makeup, that's a big one. If they have a lot of seniors, that means they're all leaving soon, which means that there's a spot for you, okay? That's a huge one to look at, all right? If they have a lot of upper class people, that would be something to look at as well. All right, coach relationship with current players. When you go on a visit to a campus, you will meet with the team, and you can always ask the players, how is your relationship with them? They'll be honest with you. I've heard both. I've had a couple, there was a women's basketball player in Madison that we had that went on a couple visits, and fantastic relationship with the coaches, ended up committing to the school, but players love the coach, right? It went the opposite direction with another student athlete, and that was a school that they kind of pushed aside, right? They will tell you, honestly, when you're one-on-one, how that relationship is, okay? Rooming with other athletes, most likely you're gonna room with other athletes, okay? I don't know how it works at each school, they're all different, but you know, how does the rooming situation work? Do you room in a apartment with 4 bedrooms in a central location, or are you in a dorm with all freshman athletes, okay? Facilities, are the facilities modern or older, right? I talked about earlier how this auditorium is amazing and really nice, and it is. There are some I've seen that are really old, and they're not as great. And so what do the facilities look like? What are you looking for when you're there? Because you're going to be the one that's probably spending about 40%, 30% of your time in those facilities, right? There have been some gyms that I don't even want to get into. It's incredible that they're still standing. There are some that are so modern and so nice that they're unbelievable that like student athletes get that, and it's incredible. All right, are there shared locker room spaces, practice field courts, that kind of thing? So like maybe you have to practice at 7 p.m. at night because you don't have the facilities to have both gyms available to teams, right? And so what does that look like as well? All right, and how close are the facilities to campus? One thing about U of I that I hated was their basketball facility was like a half mile off campus, so you had to walk like 2 miles to get to the facility, and then we had to wheel all of the uniforms from the practice facility across to their stadium in the dead of winter, right? That was not fun. Athletes had to walk from the practice facility to our assembly hall, which was, not something that was really nice. So it was harder for recruiting, right? Like you don't want to walk in the cold and be out there. All right, travel, we talked about this a little bit. What is your travel for the games? How does it look for the school year? One big thing you want to look at too, and this is for parents as well, is how close do they play the games, right? Like if you're a student athlete and you're like, yeah, I want to go away. I want to go to like California and enjoy the warm weather and stuff like that. You won't be able to get home quite often for the home-cooked meal, right? You won't be able to see family and friends. Are they going to be able to see you as well? Like, are the games televised on TV, right? Are you, friends and family going to be able to get out there and watch you play? There is a comfort level in college when you leave and your family is able to come see you play and do that. And there is a kind of like warmness to that you don't recognize now, but you will once you're in college. So think about that. Like, where are you traveling? Are your family and friends going to get to see you play and do that kind of stuff? All right. And then how are you traveling? Is it by minibus? Is it by charter? Is it by charter buses? All that kind of stuff. Okay. All right. My biggest recommendation is visit campuses when you can. All right. There are certain rules regarding visiting campus. D3 does not have one. You are free to visit any D3 campus you want. You can unofficial visit, you can official visit. You can go there as many times as you want. JUCO, I believe, is the same, and NAIA doesn't have a rule. If it's D1 or D2, you must register with NCAA to take an official visit. So just know that, first and foremost, it's an official visit. They pay for everything, your flight, your meal, your hotel, all that kind of stuff. You can take as many unofficial visits as you want. That just means you pay to get there, but they can give you tickets to a game, like a football game or something like that. That's about the only thing they can pay for on an unofficial visit. But besides that, you can visit the campus anytime you want. I recommend getting on campus. Once you're on campus, you'll feel whether or not this is for you or not. Okay? All right, college athletics is changing. This is the last thing, and most of you know NCAA is crazy. All right. Changes to college athletics. All right, online coursework for NCAA. So for those of you that are interested in taking an online course and you may not want to take in person here, they went back to the rules that were COVID before. So before COVID. All right, any online course, you have to get registered and you have to make sure that you're identifying that it is an online course, and then they review individually every single course that you're taking online, not in person. So if it is one of those that you are like taking some sort of Pearson class or whatever, please make sure that you are in a class that counts for eligibility. All right, they will review that separate from the Sun Prairie West or East information, okay? Correct. Yeah, college classes are a little different. It's a different one. Transfer portal, most of you know about this. A lot of students transfer. You hear the success stories of it, but there are a lot of students that do transfer that do not make it to another school. Please be mindful of that it may not always be, grass is greener on the other side kind of thing. A lot of students are transferring back and forth. They don't end up in a place, and then they're kind of stuck in this limbo spot where they don't play for a year. Transfer portal does affect your recruiting as well for high school, because if a school, like I said before, takes a lot of transfers, you may want to look at some other schools and options in that realm. I will say Congress is getting involved in the NCAA piece. I'm going to assume sooner rather than later it will change the transfer portal and NIL deals, that kind of stuff. So as of right now, it's still status quo with those two things. All right, conference realignment. As we all know, the Big Ten has about 45 schools now. east to west coast. It affects D3 and D2 as well. Not too long ago, St. Thomas in Minnesota went from D3 to D1. All right, pay attention to that. I can't even begin to tell you what schools have switched divisions. It's just too much. So pay attention to conference realignment. That will affect what you're looking at. So if a school like St. Thomas is now D1 and they want to go to like the SEC, they can. Like they might have to sit out a year, but they can do that. And you're going to be traveling to Florida, Georgia, Alabama, all that kind of stuff. All right. I'm not saying they will. I'm not saying that for everybody, but all right. Conference realignment. All right. NIL deals for student athletes in college. All right. You can get an NIL deal in the state of Wisconsin if you are in college. Unfortunately, we do not have it for high school students. All right. If you hear about other students like Illinois, they have it. All right, high school students can get an NIL deal, not in Wisconsin. That is coming down the pipeline, I'm sure. So, all right, sorry, student athletes, you cannot get paid to endorse anything right now. All right, Division I scholarships for all sports are set to increase. This is going, with the new ruling and the Power 5 schools paying a ton of money to other schools, the athletic scholarships are increasing for all sports. This will come down sometime in the late fall, I believe. I'm hopeful. This means, I think the example I have in my head is softball used to have like 10 to 15, but you had to divide them up, but now they're getting like 30 D1 scholarships. So this is going to affect those scholarships. So if you are a student athlete that is interested in that D1 level, this might be the time where you have that option to gain that athletic scholarship, okay? So that is probably gonna come down, I would imagine, sometime in like November in that realm. All of the scholarships are gonna increase. So that goes for equestrian, and there is equestrian and NCAA, there's track and field, there's football, there's rugby, all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in one of those, you can start looking at those, and there may be an opportunity to get a full ride scholarship for D1 athletics, okay? All right, last thing I want to tell you is that each athlete takes a different path, okay? You are going to talk to your friends. They're not going to have the same situation as you. You guys might have similar grades, you might have similar athletic talent, but your journey and your path is different, okay? Take whatever comes your way and enjoy that process. If you're getting recruited, celebrate that, because not every student athlete does get that opportunity, right? You hear those commercials all the time, like 7% of student athletes in high school get a chance to go play college athletics. It's probably like 10 to 15% get recruited, so you're in the top 85% of your class, right? That is an amazing thing. If you put the work in recruiting, you will get some coaches calling you, and that's a fantastic thing. Not every student athlete gets that opportunity, so please take advantage of that. All right, in the end, as long as you're doing what you love to do, that's the key. And when you get to college and you play athletics, it's gonna be amazing. You're gonna experience, you're gonna make friends, you're gonna travel the world, travel the country, and you're gonna get to play in places that you wouldn't normally get to do. So enjoy the process. And with that said, last thing is resources. This will go out sometime, yeah, like in a week or so. Okay. These are all resources that we have for you. I would recommend, okay, so the Guide for College Bound Student Athletes used to be like 20 pages, now it's 40. It is a really good resource. I would recommend kind of browsing it. You don't have to read everything about it, but it does have really good information on all things you need to know for NCAA D1 and D2. It talks a little bit about D3, but it will answer your questions about academics. It'll answer your questions about how you register, what is an official visit, recruiting, all that kind of stuff, all right? So if you're interested, these will be available to you. Chelsea will send this out to all families who have signed up on the form, and then you'll have access to all these. These are all hyperlinked in there, okay? So I will stick around for a little bit. If anybody has like individual questions, or if anybody has a question in general, I can take some questions now. Thank you for your time, I appreciate it. So, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the question is, make sure I get this right, is a coach continuously emails, but you're kind of unsure how you want to do that. I always say, like, for student athletes to be cordial, and you be honest with the coach, right? Like, you don't want to be untruthful, because what happens is again, coaches talk and they're like, well, this student athlete told me they're interested, but they're really not. Usually what I recommend is you would say something like, I appreciate the opportunity to learn about your program, learn about what your college is like and all that kind of stuff. At this moment, I'm in the process of deciding what my future will look like, and I will let you know at the soonest possible moment. Play the kind of political game of, if they keep sending them. I would just kind of keep repeating it just until, and then I think, if it comes to a point, I think you're going to probably make a decision on that one. If it gets to the point, like, they're either going to annoy you enough to where you're like, I'm done, or, you kind of get to that point where you're deciding that it's getting later in the game and I need to make a decision on whether or not this is a viable option. Once you decide that this is not a viable option, I would recommend being nice and cordial in the way that you tell a coach no, right? You want to say, like, thank you so much for your time, I appreciate it. However, I'm going to go in a different direction right now, but if anything changes, I'll reach out in the future. That kind of thing. So yeah, hopefully that answered your question enough. Okay, yes? Yeah. Yeah, so college recruiting, if you're D1 or D2, there are calendars that they have that are very difficult to read, and there are specific, there may be dates where coaches cannot reach out to you, and they're called like dead periods, right? So the idea behind that is essentially that a coach can't have contact with you. To answer your question, essentially, they usually, I would say, end of junior year, they'll make offers. Some get some earlier, like a verbal commitment, might be sophomore, end of sophomore, in that realm. Traditionally, you're looking at the junior and senior level. I will say, though, is coaches recruit as early as 8th grade at this point. Some of them, at least I've seen. So, yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah, I think as a parent, that's a great question. As a parent, you don't want to be over involved, because then it becomes like, then the coach will probably start thinking like, well, is this student athlete independent of the parent, right? Coaches will recruit the parent as well, so they will watch you a little bit. But I would say if you can push your student athlete to do most of it, that's probably the best, right? And then you can be there for support and that kind of thing. I don't think you have to be like extremely involved, but I think they should be the ones sending the email contacts. If you want to kind of keep in touch with the coach and say, hey, like, they will reach out to you to ask like for an interview or come talk to you anyway, because coaches do come on house visits and things like that. So they'll include you in some of that communication. But we tend to tell parents to like let the student athlete take control of the process. If they're not taking control in the background, I think parents should be more involved, like saying, hey, let's get moving on this, and like let's kind of respond to this email or text or social media, message, those kind of things. But they will look, like at a sporting event, they'll watch parents too, and how they interact with other parents and that kind of stuff, because you're going to be at the games, right? So for colleges, they'll kind of watch your behavior as well. So I don't know if that helped answer, but yeah, I particularly lean towards make the student do it. Like, they're the ones that are going to college, they're the ones that are playing, they're the ones that make that decision on what they want, but you actively have a role in that as well as their parent or guardian. So communicate with them on that end. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah, so student athletes have two criteria. The first one is you have to gain admission, right, to the college campus. And so this is where the student athlete piece comes in. As an athlete, to qualify for an athletic scholarship, you have to have a 2.2 minimum GPA in those courses of English, math, science, history, world language. They don't technically, like art will not count, PE will not count. So they don't look at that. They look at those core courses and take your GPA and calculate it. And so if you are eligible for the college admission but not eligible for NCAA, you won't get an athletic scholarship. 2.3. Yep. But there are some other minute rules that it's a little more difficult, but I'm not going to get into those. Chelsea will help you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for college admissions, their minimum is 2. Usually for UW-Madison, just to gain admission, I would recommend 3 or 4. You're competing against 40,000 other freshman students that are across the country. So you want to have the best academic resume as you can. And so with that, and I know it changed with Act 95 and the whole Wisconsin guarantee, right? So with that though, I would recommend you have as many as you can. And like I said before, when you're doing the graduation requirements for Sun Prairie West or East, you're most likely getting the 16 core courses for NCAA anyway. It's usually, we recommend like looking at it each year because there are classes that you would think like AP Computer Science would count for a math class or a science class. It doesn't count for either one. And so the idea is that instead of that, maybe you take that AP Computer Science, but instead of study hall, you take like a physics or something on the side that kind of helps with that 16 and get there. But counselors are versed in this, like transcript review and all that kind of stuff. So I would recommend meeting with your counselor and doing that. And they know the college requirements as well, so. Any other questions? Good, all right, thank you. If you have any questions, I'll be up here hanging out, or back there, either way. But thank you all for coming, appreciate it. Yeah.